goes the clock.
Right on cue.
Front parking lot?
The back, I think.
Well, let's hope it's not my car. Because I'm not going to do it. So we're going to meditate in rhythm.
Okay, the pressure cleaners were on the
In
roof.
between each beat. Zero in on that breath.
It's like this happens to me when I sit.
Time for a New York City, Center City.
Well, but we're in a very urban area. Yay. Okay, so let's just take a moment to generate a positive intention, to try to, remember, why do I show up? Or why did I show up tonight? Whatever. And then from whatever that motivation was, to set a positive intention, to use your time well, to fulfill that motivation. Yeah.
So it's always good to combine with our positive intention the wish that it also benefit not only your own mind, but that it ripples out to benefit others. And then the Bodhichita motivation, our intention is really, may whatever I do get me closer to enlightenment so that I can quickly become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. If you're having trouble letting go of all the thoughts about what you were doing before you got here or on the way here, or having trouble letting go planning for later this evening or tomorrow, place your attention on the sensation of your breath. Really try to become familiar with that sensation of the in-breath and the out-breath at the tip of the nose. It's always helpful to take a few deep breaths and then just settle in on your breath naturally. Anytime your mind gets pulled away, you get engaged in the thoughts that drift through the mind, just think the word breath and come back to that sensation. moment, we're aware of the noises, of the temperature in the room, any aches and pains in the body. Even the thoughts rising in the mind. We can still anchor our awareness to our breath. Now briefly reflect on equanimity. Bring a friend to mind, a stranger, and someone you find difficult. And think about how those labels of friend, stranger, and difficult arise. What are they dependent upon? These labels depend upon our relationship with each at this moment. What they do for us or don't do for us, if we consider them helpful or an obstacle, or if we just don't consider them at all. The friend may be someone else's enemy. The enemy is someone else's friend. The stranger is someone else's friend and someone else's enemy and someone else's stranger. And all three have been strangers in this very life. So just reflect on how fluid our labels for others are. It really depends on what they're doing for us. It's a function of what we like or don't like. We have no idea if all the strangers in our life would become friends or enemies. But regardless of the label, we can see that others are equal to us in wanting to be happy and wanting not to suffer. typically see them as friends, enemies, or strangers. Just like us. They don't want to suffer. And they seek happiness. So all living beings can be a condition for our compassion, our wish for them to be free of suffering, and love, our wish for them to be happy. So in our quest for Bodhichita, if we have a quest for Bodhichita, what's the next step of the 7 causes and effects?
Recognizing that all sentient beings have been our mothers.
Yes, exactly so. So does that seem like a leap to anybody else? Oh, meanwhile, I'm breaking the microphone again. So we need logic with this. First of all, what are your obstacles? How are you doing with equanimity?
Fairly decent.
Good. Anybody noticing any, like, I'm sorry, but I'm just not gonna go there kind of reaction? Hi, Judy.
Yeah, it's just like, it's totally shocking to me how far I am from having equanimity. I saw it recently.
Yeah, and that's how we all are. I mean, it's really quite a shock to realize that how quickly, like, we can be sitting thinking about it and we're completely on board with the idea that really these labels are just from our side, that we really don't have to treat them as like facts. But then something happens. And it's, really hard to go back to equanimity. So, but we just have to remember that equanimity really doesn't have anything to do with someone's behavior or speech. It has everything to do with just being a suffering sentient being. So, yes, speak out, Ralph.
So usually we speak of equanimity from kind of or it seems so anyway, from an egocentric.
Can you speak up louder?
I'm sorry. When contemplating equanimity, I've assumed and taken the position that it's from an egocentric point of view, right?
Yeah,
In
us.
terms, right.
It has to do with me.
Has to do with me, but usually with respect to judging others. But what I noticed as I was kind of contemplating this sort of this week is that, and I'm not sure exactly how to express it, but I have a poor habit of not treating myself with equanimity. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
No, totally. We're a suffering sentient being that we don't treat fairly at all.
Right, thank you.
So, yeah, we need to recognize that because self-equanimity is equally important. And so what does that mean?
You're part of all that sentient beings who are gonna help out.
But, yeah, but what does it mean to say, that to have equanimity for the self?
Self-compassion.
Self-care, self-compassion.
And it means exactly the same thing as when we're talking about others, that it has nothing to do with your behavior of body, speech, and mind. It has only to do with your plight of being stuck in cyclic existence and being driven by ignorance and disturbing states of mind. And this is hard for us, because there's a part of us that operates out of a belief that you have to be deserving and others have to be deserving, as opposed to just this acceptance that because you exist, because you experience pain, it's, wishing that to end is reasonable. Because it's not saying that you can do whatever you want to end your suffering, like kill everybody you don't like. That, that's not acceptable behavior. I mean, society can lock you up for that, and that's perfectly reasonable too. What it's getting at is that the desire to be happy and free of suffering is like wisdom. It's just like, of course, And the teachings just say we're just totally ignorant of what actually makes us happy. Because we really do think it's about getting rid of all the people we don't like, getting rid of all the situations we don't like, getting rid of everything you can imagine that you just don't like. And the Buddha said it has absolutely nothing to do with that. First of all, that's never going to happen. So it's not even a realistic idea. But also, the focus on our point of view, on our perspective, our preferences, is what leads us to suffer. Do we buy that at all?
Yes.
Even the people of obstacles? Yes.
I had a 3-hour meeting today that we took.
I already feel compassion.
Yeah, we were interviewing for a residency.
Mhm.
Got 4 spots, and we interviewed about 40 people, and we lined them up today as how we liked them.
Right.
1 through 20. And it was an uncomfortable place to be.
What do you think that's about?
There was a lot of judging.
Okay, so the judgment made you uncomfortable?
And I think when it was over, all I could think of was, if I just thought everybody else that didn't make the ranking, I certainly hope they
Oh, that's a great thing.
go to a place that will suit them better, and just kind of said a little prayer for
Now, were the 20 people in the room? Like, did you line them up?
no.
Okay,
No.
so they weren't present. But it is interesting, isn't it, how judgmental we can be in our minds. But then when we hear it expressed, how uncomfortable we are with it. Which ought to be a clue that doesn't lead to happiness, being judgmental. And this is where we can start to, practice with it in the sense that, of course, you have to decide, make judgments and decide, oh, who might best be appropriate for this job, and da-da-da-da, that's how these things are done. It's not like you just go, who has the most need for a job? No, you go, who has the most skills for this job? So there's, that's all right. We need to understand, though, that our judgments about skills or getting, whatever that don't fit in with the ambience of the place or whatever, doesn't say anything about the worth of that person. This is the mistake we make. We leap from actions or information that hopefully is accurate about someone to a judgment of their worth, not an assessment of behavior, whether it's suitable or not for whatever circumstance. Can you see a difference in that?
Yeah.
We do it to ourselves, and we certainly do it to others. And we're missing the whole point when we do it. The value of being able to assess, our behavior or others' behavior is because it provides useful information. It helps us figure out, I'm not being too skillful here. Maybe I want to do this differently. Or, wow, I really like the way that went. I'm going to do that again. We have to assess. That's using our wisdom. But that's not how we use judging, do we? We just kind of, I don't like that dress. What a, we might even think that says something about someone's morality. It's amazing. They don't have any taste. I'm glad I didn't try that color lipstick. Whatever. We were really shallow about it. And we want to know that. We want to recognize that. Where do I get off deciding that I see someone pass by and I know who they are? Or even they actually have the nerve to work with me. And based on this tiny sliver of their life, I know who they are. And not only do I know who they are, I can judge their worth. None of which has any foundation in reality at all. And it's true of how we treat ourselves. We keep trying, this is part of that ignorance. We keep thinking that things exist by some sort of permanent nature. So that when we do something unskillfully, we are just unskillful. It has nothing to do with the action, it's our being. We are the nature of being unskillful. And then when we do something really well, we think, oh, I'm good. And this inflated, puffed up sense of self arises. And so hence we're going like this. Because sometimes we do things well and sometimes we don't do things well. And the same is true of everybody else, except those people, that we all think, oh, they do everything right, and they always look just right, and they always look fresh, and they never look like they had a hard night or a hard day or anything, They never seem to struggle, they never sweat. That's my personal favorite. How can you be out in this heat and not be sweating? This is another advantage of having no hair, because now you don't see how straightly my hair got when I start sweating. So, of course, that changed when it turned gray. It was a little, fuller. So we really want to understand that our labeling is arising from these kind of judgments. You know? And we want to beware of that because they're inaccurate. So, doesn't mean we're not going to, of course, have friends and people that we enjoy being with more than other people that we do, you know, because we do have preferences and we have style, you know, we have all sorts of things. But we don't have to take that leap of then deciding someone's worth. Because we really don't like the thought of wishing someone well that we think is despicable. And we want to look at that. You know? Because we all know how horrible it is when you're in the position where someone is judging you that way. You know? And you have to, you know, just how, you know, it's like if, you know, if your parents were really critical, what it does to you year after year after year of hearing nothing but, you're not living up to my expectations. So we don't really want to continue that tradition in our minds. And of course, according to the Buddha, if we're born into a family like that, we created the which may be a clue about how we treated kids in the past, when they were our responsibility. But again, it's not about work. It's about a misunderstanding what will bring us happiness. Because part of our belief is if we feel better than others, we'll be happier. If we show ourselves to be smarter or more successful or more skillful or funnier or I don't know, whatever. And so we want to notice the things in our thoughts that are clues to that's what we're acting from. So that we can kind of say, well, maybe that's not true. And then every time, you know, like Beyonce said on Sunday, you know, that we see this just little glimmer of recognition that, oh, maybe that's not true. We rejoice like mad. Oh, because we really do live in a society, in a world that just feels free constantly to bombard us with opinions. So when we can actually question our own opinion, it's that hour of sunlight in Portland. You know, so it may not seem like a big deal in Florida, but it's a really big deal if you live in Portland. So my brother and sister-in-law live in Portland, so I knew what Yancy Rinpoche was speaking. Okay, so those are the kinds of things to reflect on when you look at equanimity. And it really is very important, like Ralph said, you know, to bring your own view of yourself into it, to really notice when you're being judgmental about yourself and how that impacts you, to see if you think that says something about your work. Okay, so viewing all beings as been our mother. What is the foundation of this idea?
That it's easy for you to show compassion and love initially towards your own mother.
Okay.
So, being and following this logically, if I bestow that same kind of subconscious opinion about him, you, and everybody, I give what I give my mom.
Right.
You know?
So it is this idea that if, you know, now it's based on the assumption that we love our moms, you know. So if you don't love your mom, find someone else. You know, find your best friend or a caregiver or your dad, you know, or your aunt or your grandma, your nan. So But if you know, because our affection naturally arises, because if our moms needed us, we would try to be able to be there for her, you know, that we can start to see others being as at least as the possibility that they have played this role for us in some life, you know, that will help us break down that sense of separation or that sense of they not worthy of my affection. You know. And then from a Buddhist point of view, what are some of the foundation for thinking this way?
The fact that our mind streams have always existed. There's no beginning, no end.
Okay, so yes, it's from the being positive that our consciousness has always existed, and you know, so that means we just keep changing bodies, you know, our little guest houses. So if that's the case, we have parents extending back for as long as we've had consciousness, which is forever. There's no beginning. So that's the Buddhist logic there, that everybody, because we've been around since beginningless time, has played the role of our parents. And we have also been the parent of everybody else. And so that can be a starting point for looking at individuals differently. And not treating them based on what they're doing for me now. So it's coming from a place of trust that it's in some lifetime, this being has taken really good care of us. And so to judge them based on whether they're in our lives or not in our lives or how they treat us today is short-sighted. Just like our friends of today weren't always our friends. Some of our friends started off as people we didn't like. Many of our friends from the past are now strangers because we no longer live in the same town, we've lost track. All of them have been strangers. So it's fluid, the relationships we have with others. So Buddhism just suggests you can step really far back and not just talk about today, this month, this year, last year, 10 years, but all of time. Much bigger perspectives. So that's the logic here. One of the foundations of this is that the consciousness is said to be non-physical. So the cause of something non-physical has to be non-physical. So each moment of our mind, the cause of that is the previous moment of mind, and the previous moment of that, and the previous moment of that. And so you just go back and back and back and back and back until the time of conception, and your mind at that moment was caused or produced by the last moment of mind in your prior life. But due to our ignorance, we don't remember, and we don't bring everything with us, we just bring our strongest habits with us. We good? Now, obviously, you're going to have to meditate on a lot more to ever come to this conclusion that maybe we've existed since beginningless time. So when we're doing it for this purpose, when we're just starting, we're just beginners, you know, if you're open to it, great, run with it, you know, but if there's a part of you that goes, yeah, whatever, you know. Focus in on the fluidity of our labels and this idea that we feel like because of certain actions of body, speech, and mind, we can decide the worth of an individual. Because that is based on this ignorant idea that we are permanent in some way, that we can't change. So this is my favorite part of the argument, is how can you say there's no beginning? And of course, we know there was a beginning to cup. Yeah, there was a time then this cup didn't exist. We know that. But when you look at the parts of the cup, and the parts of those parts, 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 you're never going to get to a beginning. Feel free to argue. I will disagree.
I wouldn't per se want to argue with you, but just something that's kind of adjacent and parallel for me. I always talk about this when I speak about time, especially. It's not linear.
Well,
When I say-
time, though, is not physical.
Yes, it's not linear, but meaning, so it's not hard for me to get to this, because I
Well,
know
I'm
that
glad.
it's more of a circle than it is a straight line. You know,
I'm glad.
so I can't have a beginning or an end to a circle.
Okay.
So that's how I.
That's how Chris works with it.
That's how I work with it.
That's not how I work with it. You have to find your own way of trying to, or if you have a, scientific mind and background both, then you may have all sorts of things that play into this that I couldn't even begin to get my head around.
So, I'm just wondering, when you talked about the glass has a function.
Yeah, but it didn't always.
Right, but it wasn't a glass when it didn't have that function. It was
Right.
just molecules, really.
Right. But you couldn't find the beginning of this glass because all those causes and conditions have to come together for this to exist. You could never take one of them away and have this. It's really hard to get that, to you kind of imagine, oh, you mean all those atoms and molecules or whatever, elements from the Big Bang, all of them had to be there for this cup to exist? Yes. The answer is yes. I'm not saying there couldn't be a different cup here. But this cup is the result of every moment of all those parts before coming together. And if any of them are missing, this cup won't exist.
Why are we going back so far?
Because beginningless time, we're discussing beginningless time.
Oh, okay.
And we're discussing cause and effect. That just like in the physical universe, what Buddha is saying is just like in the physical universe where everything has a cause, and you can go back and back and back. The same is true of the non-physical mind. So this idea, there has to be a beginning. What happens if you have a beginning?
You have an end.
No?
If something had to.
Somebody had to start the beginning. So was that causeless?
You're speaking if like a deity was to create something.
But somebody had to create the deity.
Well, sure.
So that
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's
so
cool.
it's just sort of like, okay. So it's just as hard to imagine a beginning as to imagine no beginning. So, I'm kind of okay with that.
Crazy how that works.
Yeah, it's crazy
The moment
how
I
that
was
works.
introduced to that, I was
Because this is one of those examples of ways we can start looking at how we think and how sometimes we're, coming from totally an assumption. Just, if we really look, we can't really find an answer because, we don't have the ability to have an answer at this point. But it helps us understand what we mean by beginnings and no beginnings. And that the way we see time has a lot to do with all of this. But it's not just how we see time, it's how we experience time. So. So when we're trying to view all beings as having been our mother, what we're trying to generate is a feeling that, that we haven't always been who we are right now. And we don't have to go beyond this life to even notice that. If we look back 20 years ago, obviously physically we were different, but our thoughts were different, what we focused on was different, what our hopes and dreams, was different. We're changing all the time. There isn't anything that's fixed. And we've had different relationships with people. And those relationships can change dramatically. It's not like they just change a little bit. So it's worth, really, when you're reflecting on things like equanimity, and then, each of these steps, to reflect on it again and again and again and again. You kind of can go in circles with it. You do a week on equanimity, then a week on seeing all people as your mother, and then a week on the next step, and so on. And then you start back at stage one. Because this is contrary to how we think now. It's not like we don't intellectually get it. We do intellectually get it. It's that, we may not get whether there's a beginning or not, but there's, we know that our labels are just labels, and they're just, that we call a friend our friend, and then, somebody else would not like them at all, and blah, blah, blah. We intellectually get that. What we don't is experience what that means. Because we grasp at things. So it's really difficult to imagine our friends ever not being our friends, other than, yes, of course, they were strangers. And yes, we can imagine that if they slept with our partners, we might not like them anymore. But they wouldn't do that because they're our friends. Yeah, exactly.
I second that.
I've been there too. Yeah, so this is, but this is the problem, is that we really think we react and respond to the world as if we direct it, and we don't. So one way to practice is to just practice going through the day, and when you see someone, you just think, oh, that's a mind stream in a body. And not go to, not go to those labels that go beyond, that create a story.
Can you say that in a different way?
No.
This is a mind stream living in a body.
It's a body and a mind. That's what a self is. That's what a person is. It's a body and mind. We say in the body because in our current abilities, that's where it is. Yes.
Wouldn't it be more beneficial to think of that person was once my mother?
Yes, but it can also help to, if you're really good at that and not, if there's no doubts that arise, yes, you can start there. What we want to do is strip our habit of going from facts to stories, so that we can just kind of step back, because we spend most of our day going from story to story to story to story to story to story. That when we see a friend, a whole story comes with them. Not so much of a problem with our friends, but with the people we find difficult, we don't even give them a chance. This whole story of, oh, there's that difficult person. So we want to be able to start recognizing that everything but the fact that that's a mind and body coming towards me is going to be a story we're making up. Based on our preferences, based on our desires, based on our aversions, all of that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No. What is your,
I don't understand. It's like a mind stream in the body. I mean, I still have like associations with that mind stream in the body. Like
yeah, but that's
I still
what
like
we,
the mind stream in the body, or I still don't like the mind stream in the body.
yeah, but you don't have to go there. Okay? See, what happens is we so immediately go there with the story, preference, like, dislike. We don't give ourselves any pause, any ability to stand back and recognize what I'm experiencing as this person comes towards me is different than the person standing next to me experience. And maybe that experience is dependent on my story about this person and not what's actually happening. Which is why we treat people differently based on what group we put them in. Because in what way does seeing someone coming towards us and us thinking, I don't like this person, help us?
No way.
How does that contribute to our happiness?
No way.
If you just see a body and a mind coming towards you, without that, what's possible?
At least you're not experiencing any disturbing states of mind at the moment, but I guess what's possible is that you could develop compassion for them.
You might like them. Because in that moment, they may do something you like.
I think that's the bottom line. It's not about the person at all. It's about our own
That's exactly right.
self-cherishing. And,
That's right.
You know, if they do something that makes me happy, then I'm going to like them. If they do something that, turns me off, I'm not going to like them.
And what is the problem with that?
The problem is you're not a happy person.
Right, because your happiness is completely dependent upon these things outside of you happening or not happening. Whereas if your happiness comes from within and has nothing to do with what's coming at you, you can be happy all the time. Happy might not be the right word, because we're not talking about a happiness that's, that we get from sensual delights. We're talking about the kind of contentment, peace of mind, non-worry, non-agitated, non-stirred up kind of mind that's at peace and content, feels safe, feels in control, I like to think of it as the mind, and this will not be true for y'all, because we all have these different, we're coming from these different stories. So for me, it's that mind that says I can handle whatever comes up. I don't actually think that, but that's the mind I'm trying to have. So the more we can detach from our storyline about a person or an event, the more that we can say, okay, yeah, it's raining and this is my vacation. That doesn't have to ruin my vacation. The more opportunity we can have to be okay with whatever's going on. So these are just little practices of trying to be able to step back. Because right now, if we look at our minds, we'll see how much we chase. We're just constantly going, oh, I don't like this situation, let's move over here. Oh, I don't like this situation, let's move over here. I don't like this person, let's try to find, we're just constantly, or, oh, I hate this class. So you were just waiting for the class to end. Because we're focused on whether we really like it or really don't like it. And guess what's gonna happen? Well, and it will change. So if you like it, it's gonna change. If you don't like it, it's gonna change. You know? So the more we can step back and just go, well, it's gonna change. It's impermanent. I don't have to have an opinion. And then we have to also remember the point of all this. This isn't an idle exercise. It is about trying to loosen the grip on our current mental habits to develop ones that perhaps will be more skillful and lead us to more happiness, more contentment, reduce our suffering.
You could have said in the beginning something, I can't remember exactly the words you used, but we come into this life programmed, you didn't say that.
With
but,
habits.
You know, with habits. Right.
Because of our previous life's
Right.
habits.
And so now, what you're saying is we can change those habits.
Right.
And not come into our next life.
Oh, no, we'll hopefully come into our next life with new habits.
But not these bad ones.
Well, I mean, but this is the point, is that it's possible to develop, you know, I mean, this is what the teachings are about, you know, trying to learn what things to abandon. In other words, what incorrect states of mind we've been relying upon that have not been useful, and what states of mind might turn out to be beneficial to adopt. And in this particular class, talking about bodhicitta is taught as a mind we want to adopt, which is the mind that wishes to remove all those mistaken states of mind, perfect all the good states of mind to benefit others. So what's the premise here?
What component?
He takes tests, so he gets really nervous about things. So, because he always gets, you know.
Well, it's possible. It is possible. We can see it by little things that have changed in our life.
It's also saying that benefiting others is the path to happiness. That just taking care of your self-interest, self-desire, self-cherishing is not. That actually doesn't lead us to happiness. In fact, it just keeps us dissatisfied all the time. Because we're always thinking about what's not going exactly perfectly. And I don't know about you, but nothing's ever going exactly perfectly. I mean, not a single moment.
Ever.
It's just like amazing, you know? I mean, I can pop a Godiva chocolate in my mouth and as it's melting, have some dissatisfaction. I'm probably immediately thinking of my teeth and calories, you know, or that was not worth it. Yeah, I mean, it's like we just don't even know how to rest in the delight. So this is the next thing we can think about. If we see things just, you know, living beings as just a body and a mind, we can think about them, well, they might not have always been in this body. And if they haven't always been in this body, then maybe I haven't always had the same relationship I have with them now when they were in a different body. You know, the Buddhists, this story they like to tell about this is a being with, well, Buddha, you know, who has no ignorance, seeing a family having, you know, a meal and knowing, and this Buddha knowing that the father is eating what used to be his son. The fish on his plate was his son in the previous life. You know, his partner, you know, the wife in the previous life, you know, was his dog. I'm making this up now because I can't remember the
Yeah.
details. But you know, and so the idea is that, and that's happening all the time. You know, this grasping after someone to be this forever and always is meaningless when you look at beginningless time. What is it? And it also, for me, it's this reminder that there's a possibility, even if you could kill everybody you don't like, you will meet them again.
Sure.
They're not gone forever. They're just out of your life now.
It's like a game.
Because
Temporary.
consciousness does not cease. So, you know, we can keep perfecting our ability to kill people life after life, which will just end up meaning that we will finally have a life where there isn't a single person we want to be around. Because they're all going to treat us badly because we've been, you know, killing them life after life after life. So, it's not an effective strategy. So we're better, if you know, from the big view, we're better off seeing everybody as a potential friend and caring about their happiness or their suffering. Particularly, if you want to keep self-interest in the picture, they might be taking care of you next. So, you know, it's worth your while to treat them well. You know, so you don't have, you know, it's really funny when you think about it. You know? Because we think, you know, I think, you know, oh, I know that person could never have been, you know, we have these ridiculous thoughts. So, anyway, I mean, and trust me, if you knew me as a 20-year-old, you would never, ever, 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 ever think I would be in robes today. Ever. Not in a billion years would you think that if you came from a place of ignorance and disturbing emotions, you know. So this is just something to use as a way of trying to lessen your grip on your belief system. You know, just a way to kind of start looking at people and not immediately going to your already decided view. You know? And then to think about all the things that someone has done that is kind to us, you know, that, I mean, it's just, you know, if we just think about our parents in this life and how we wouldn't be alive without them taking care of us when we were helpless, and what it's like to take care of someone who's helpless. So if you haven't been a parent yourself, if you're a parent, you know how hard it is to care for someone when they're helpless, you know. And if you haven't been a parent, but you've taken care of someone who was ill and helpless, it's hard work. It's not rewarding all the time. Your paycheck doesn't get any bigger. It's just like, you know, it's basically, you do it because it's needed. So if we can allow ourselves to sit with all the kindnesses we've received from, you know, the beginning with our caregivers when we were born, you know, the doctors and nurses that might have been present, or the midwives, or the taxi cab driver, you know, whoever was present at our birth, and that, you know, they gave us what we needed in that moment. And they continue to provide adequate care. Adequate meaning we're still alive now. Even if they gave us kind of pitiful care, the fact that we're alive now is that we got enough. And then if you branch it out and start thinking about, you started to eat baby food. How many people were involved in that existing? Even if your parents very kindly made you baby food out of fresh food, fresh fruit and veg. Somebody still grew all that fruit and veg. Not only that, somebody had to remember how to grow it in the life before and the life before that, or we would. So, in all the clothes, how we kept warm, all the diapers, endless diapers that people also are going to exist till the end of time. So, but to really let yourself experience the massive amounts of help from massive numbers of people, countless people, our entire lives for us to exist now in relative comfort. And these are all sentient beings who want to be happy and who do not want to suffer. Most of them are strangers. Many are people we go, ooh, I don't like them, because of our preferences, when in fact they actually help us. So when we meditate on these things, we really want to allow an experience of this to arise, the gratitude we have for the fact that people took care of us. And if you have a low opinion of yourself, then you probably will really feel it's hard. So this is why you go through these steps slowly, gradually, so that you can, you give yourself the time, since you all have busy lives, that you don't rush through it. Say, this morning I'm going to think about the kindness of all sentient beings. And really allow yourself to picture somebody in some factory somewhere working hard at making your clothes. Or someone driving the food that you eat, in some great big old truck. With all those other, drivers that we so enjoy. This also requires letting affection in. Being able to allow us these moments of recognition that probably at some time, at some point, someone had spontaneous affection for us based on nothing we were doing at the time. Just because we existed and we were seen as theirs. Unless they were Buddhists. We were raised by Buddhists. And then wishing to repay that kindness. And we really want to be able to generate an experience of this that doesn't come from a place of, I owe them something. Because it's not a scorecard. And this takes a lot of reflection, trying to recognize that all of our happiness comes from all these beings who have been kind to us in life after life. This takes some thinking about our own good qualities and how we need others for them to develop. All the people who've taught us all the different things that benefit us, all the qualities about ourselves that we like, are cultivated in times when others either teach us or they need something from us. So all of our patience comes from handling difficult situations, difficult people. All our generosity comes from people who need something from us. These are not behaviors of body, speech, and mind that arise when everything's perfect. It comes from things not being perfect. So in Buddhism, they talk about the God realms as being, a God realm is one where you have lots of your good karma ripening. But all you do is exhaust your good karma because you have no opportunity to help someone else because everybody there has everything they need and want and whatever. So a bodhisattva really is delighted whenever someone needs something from them, whenever they're faced with a difficult situation, because it's an opportunity for them to grow their good qualities, all of which we have. We have all the good, we have the basis for all these good qualities. We just need conditions, and then we need to make the effort to practice them. So, slowly, slowly. And then it's an opportunity to think about how we actually have conditions in which we can repay kindness. We have leisure time, so we can cook a meal for someone else. Not that I do that. And some of you who are really kind will do that for me. I've been the recipient of your kindness. So. But because we have some good circumstances, good resources, and good conditions in our life now, that means we can really feel good about our opportunity to be able, that idea of paying it forward, So it's this, so it's another opportunity to rejoice. Rejoicing is, we earn merit for rejoicing. So, go for it. And then generating love. This, if you've done the first steps well, this one will probably just arise. But it's really trying to see other sentient beings as lovable. They may not be lovable now. In this moment, they may not do anything that is beneficial to you or whatever. But that there are moments when they are lovable. That whatever we're experiencing in that moment is a temporary state due to causes and conditions. And it's possible to love them through it. Just like how, like if 2-year-olds were naturally lovable, we wouldn't complain about it. But just like our parents tolerated the phases in our development that were particularly unattractive and unappealing, this is something we can cultivate in ourselves to feel towards suffering sentient beings. Beings that are really unskillful. And then we can just, we pray that these kind bodhisattvas will be around us when we're acting out.
So, I just want to understand this. Wouldn't it be enough to feel towards someone kindness without the love piece? I mean, like warmth and kindness, or just.
What is love?
Yeah.
These have very precise definitions in Buddhism. Love is the wish that someone be happy. Compassion is the wish that someone be free of suffering. You don't have to like them at all, because it has nothing to do with you. It's not whether or not they suit your preference or not your preference. I mean, obviously, when you're a bodhisattva, when you're a Buddha, everybody suits you, But in the meantime, because we are so habituated to acting from a place of what is in it for me, even if it's covered up by all sorts of other social niceties, that when it comes down to it, we think that's the path to happiness. So being surrounded by people we enjoy, you know, is important to us. But you know, it's like groups like AA or NA or whatever the current thing is, they are based on common ground. This recognition that I'm out of control here, I have a problem, I need help, and that everybody in the room understands that. It's been there. And the Buddha just said, hey, guess what?
Way bigger.
All sentient beings belong in this category. That we are all out of control due to our habits and disturbing emotions, and we can help each other if we recognize that, if we understand that's the common ground. That no, you don't have to be someone that, you know, I want to play cards with. You don't have to be somebody that I want to have a conversation with, because we may not have the same interests in this life, you know, I mean, no big deal. But I'm happy to help you because I know you suffer. You know, that's the foundation for how we interact. Also, it's important to recognize that these are mental habits we're trying to develop. There's no expectation that suddenly you can remove the suffering of others. Why is that?
It's impossible.
Why?
Because I can't see in your mind, number one, and I have no power to make anybody do or not
Go
do anything.
simple. Go simple.
Okay.
Because
do it.
they have their own karma. We can only fix ourselves. We can be good conditions for other people to have good conditions, you know. But we have to train our minds so that when we do have abilities that we don't have now, to manifest in ways that will help others so they have good conditions in order to train their minds. We cannot fix their, you know, their habits. They have to fix their habits. But we can teach, we can be models, we can do all those kinds of things. We can take advantage of every opportunity where their heart is open. Once we have those abilities of knowing when their heart's open. But for now, we're just working on removing our bias about sentient beings based on what they do or do not do for us. And understanding there actually is a common ground. And that's our desire to be happy and not suffer, and that we don't know how to do it. So from that place of affection can arise compassion, great compassion, meaning just for everyone. So when, you know, when you finally have this affection for everyone, then you can, that's a natural condition for compassion to arise for them all. And it's this recognition that, you know, of how we suffer. Is this that truth of suffering? And that everybody else is in exactly the same place. So not just guarding ourselves, thinking that's going to help us, but, you know, opening our heart to the suffering, the vulnerability, the suffering of others. Knowing that they're yelling at us or stealing from us or, you know, driving crazily along the road because they think these things will lead them to happiness. And they're wrong. You know. But we can have compassion for their ignorance. And instead of protecting, coming from a place of always, hey, don't get in my way. Which is what I do, when somebody does something dangerous on the road, and like my first thought is, don't kill me. Of course I don't want them to kill me. But what comes with that? Don't kill me. You bad person. You stupid driver. That's totally not necessary. Neither one of those are necessary, because trust me, shouting that does not protect you. Doesn't really change the outcome at all. Well, actually, it might. I did have a guy follow me through a parking lot one time, and after I parked my car, he parked right, blocking my car, and we both get out ready to just curse each other out, and then I see how young he is, and he sees how old I am, and we both are very embarrassed and leave. This was a while ago, but I wasn't a child. Road rage. This was parking lot rage instead.
Road is a good place to practice.
Yeah.
If you're like that, if you have a tendency to get mad when people, when you're driving, or if you're impatient, and you don't want to let someone in because 700 cars were let in just a minute ago, and which is fine, we want traffic to move forward, but when you really resent the person who wants to get in, you want to look at your mind. I mean, it says so clearly you're making yourself miserable. I used to, years, decades and decades ago, I had a boyfriend. We worked different hours, and so I would pick him up at the end of his workday. So I'm driving to go get him, so I'm going the opposite way in traffic. Everybody else is leaving their job, and I'm going towards someone's job, and I'm having the time of my life. I had the radio on, I'm singing, and trust me, you don't want to ever hear that, but nobody's in the car, so I can sing at the top of my lungs, and I'm bebopping along, and I'm smiling because I'm going to pick up my boyfriend, and I just think the world's great, and everybody else is and it just struck me at the time, that what my attitude was more fun, and maybe I didn't have to use it just when the traffic was going my way. I didn't succeed, of course, but I did eventually. So we want to look at how different we behave when we're really focused on ourselves versus when we're focused on others. Practice is hard. Trying to change our minds is hard. And if we're just doing it for ourselves, we won't give up when it's hard. We'll just go, oh, enough of this, back to the movie, back to the chocolate. Whatever, never harm a loved one again. That I'm really able to be mindful of my speech. I'm really able to be mindful of my actions, because I really don't want to harm anybody again. It's a lot easier to stick it out when it gets hard. So we want to use that to our advantage. The fact that we have this natural desire to be helpful, not to want to hurt people. So we want to build on that. So this is why, it's so emphasized to set intentions with the wish to benefit others, because it will actually help us do the work. So that's worth reflecting on. And you'll have to make it very personal to you. Otherwise, it's not going to have much meaning. It won't keep you going. you know, so in the morning when you get up and you go, oh, do I really have to get up and meditate for 10 minutes? You know. You want to bring these things to mind. Oh, that's right. I'm tired of being sarcastic. I'm tired of being impatient. I'm tired of fill in the blank. I'm tired of being frustrated. I'm tired of being unhappy. I'm tired of ad nauseum. And this, so I want to train my mind. I want to be in charge of my mind. And don't, you know, and mind, heart, same word. You know, when you think about how often, you know, you're doing a project at work, you know, and you skip lunch. you do all these things that, you know, because you just really want to get it done, either because you're excited about it, or you feel good about it, or just because there's a deadline to it, or whatever the reason. If we can bring a person, because, you know, we won't get paid unless we finish it on time, you know, whatever. But we self-motivate. And we will face lots of hardships to get it done. And we want to generate those same inspirations for what really is a much bigger payoff by, you know, so to help you, encourage you to, you know, work on techniques that can help us train our mind in new ways. And so that means we have to recognize when some mind comes up that's really all about self-cherishing, that we kind of go, okay, you know, I've been self-cherishing my whole life. Has that really worked for me? No. Okay. Back to thinking about others. It doesn't have to be elegant. And the hard stuff, the stuff that's really almost like you feel like it's just reflexive. I mean, I was a really angry person, so it was really easy for me to be immediately enraged and be really nasty to my loved ones. You know, really easy. So when I decided to change that, because it was just so, I was so good at it, I really had to, every time I would think about it, think about the face of people I love looking at me like I had just stabbed them in the heart. You know, and feel that again. And go, oh my God, how could I ever have said such a thing? And feel how awful, have that really genuine regret for having ever been capable of that, in order to get me to just shut up in the next moment. Because it takes a lot of effort to change some of our bad habits. So it's this, and trust me when I say my life is so much better having changed that. And then it didn't actually take all that long, looking back. Not that I'm, you know, and I'm still impatient. But, I mean, I'd say it took me about a year to really radically change how I responded to others. And that's not very long, considering how many decades I've been really mean to loved ones. I was a good friend, but, you know, don't date me. So, so anyway. And I had to come from a place that did not have self-hatred. I had to see myself as worthy enough to change that. Because my life, everybody had left me, you know, well, I didn't have to worry about them. So they figured out a way to get out of my path. But I had to get out of my path. So, you know, it was in my own self-interest to change. So, and you can't do it if you hate yourself. That just becomes this obstacle. You know, if you can't forgive yourself, you know, you won't move forward. So it's really helpful to You know, if your go-to place is to beat yourself up, to go, that doesn't help. I mean, I must have told myself that 1 billion times in 1 year. Doesn't help, doesn't help, doesn't help. Keep your mouth shut. So, great compassion is important because practice isn't easy. We need strength of mind and a willingness to go through the ups and downs. And we need that long-range motivation. Because when you think about our habit of attachment and craving and aversion, you know, it's not going to be just, it's not like a light switch, you know, where you just turn it on and turn it off. So going through these steps of really trying to find some common ground, a place to be able to come from equanimity for yourself and others, and then really considering how much others have done for you, even in just this life alone. And, you know, do it as you know, thoroughly as you need to generate that feeling of amazement and gratitude that so many things have been done for you that you know, why you're still here. I mean, it can even be seemingly stupid things like the number of beings that stopped at red lights when you were going through an intersection. You know? Then we need to think, you know, in order to generate compassion, which is the wish that people be free of suffering, you have to think about the suffering that they experience. You know, we all know they have the suffering of suffering, which is just the physical body and mind, you know, the mental suffering we have and the physical suffering we have. Our bodies are extremely fragile. We get deeply wounded by the words and behaviors of others. And that even our pleasures are the suffering of change. It doesn't last. And then the Buddha said we have all pervasive suffering. It's the nature of samsara. Samsara, you know, I mean, we have to look at the fact that, you know, birth is a terminal illness. But allow it to generate this, you know, you want to have that experience, that being suffered, just like me. They have suffering, you know, and how sad that is. Yeah.
The second type of suffering you mentioned, I have...
Suffering of change.
Suffering of change.
That's that suffering, you know, the thing that we think is pleasure, like, oh, the air conditioning just kicked in. And that's the relief from it not being hot. And then we're going to get cold. And we'll be so grateful when the air conditioning shuts off. And then we can go, oh, isn't it delightful how, you know, just watch yourself at the beach. You know, jump in the water, jump out of the water, jump in the water. So from this place, we can generate the highest intention, which means I'm going to help others be free of suffering. I'm just not going to stand back and watch. And because we have affection, we really, you know, we want to help. We're willing, just like a mother or a father, when their child is sick and their baby is sick, they will stay up all night. They will go to the emergency room in the middle of the night. They will wish again and again and again that they could take the suffering away from their child. You know, they'll do whatever is necessary to help the child get through the illness. Bodhisattvas, this is what they're generating. That kind of motivation. That's after they've achieved it. Needless to say. And then we think about all the people that act in this way, all the firemen, all the police officers, all the emergency personnel, all the first responders, all the rescue teams, how they risk their lives in order to help others who are in danger. And that, what a wonderful thing that is, to have that willingness to do that, to get the training you need. I met a young woman that was a firefighter, for wildfires in the West. How you often hear how they brought firefighters in from this state and this state and this state. Well, she was one of those people. And, and it's really, it's hard work to get trained for that.
Mm-hmm.
The level of fitness you have to have and strength and everything else, it's really remarkable. And so someone choosing to do that, it's really, that comes from a good, really good place. That's from that's from habit, from prior lives, probably. And a love of forest. But just like parents are so willing to do so much for their children, you think about all these parents who are fleeing their countries and bringing their children along, or sending their children without them. That's what happens in Tibet all the time. The people, all the Tibetans who cross the Himalayas, their parents don't come with them. So they give up. One of my one of the geshes at the Kanapa Center in North Carolina saw his mother for the first time after, I think, 30 years or something, because he left when he was 14. And you can't go back. You don't have, you don't have any papers. So it wasn't until he came here and got a passport, an American passport, that he was able to go see his family. That's a sacrifice of parents. So the highest intention is this willingness to do something. And it goes beyond that wish, where you're actually going to act. And it's this idea that you don't, well, I thought somebody else was going to help. You ever get those emails, to a group, so I need some help, and you just kind of hope other people are responding, oh yes, I can help you. But you don't find out. It's not like you send the email, well, nobody else volunteers, I'll volunteer.
Apply all.
You just try to, yes, you just try to pretend you didn't see it. I'm kidding. We want to overcome that. But so this highest intention is this, it doesn't look there, doesn't sit there going, isn't anybody else volunteering? They just jump in. And they're delighted to do so. Boy, I'd love to have this mind, because I don't have this mind yet. But then, so then what the highest intention generates is this wisdom that knows, I don't know what I'm doing. My mind's a mess. So where can I get the skill I need in order to be of benefit? The kind of benefit that removes suffering. And that's when you generate this desire to become enlightened for the benefit of all beings. So every time a bodhisattva sees others, sees the cat or the dog or the rich or the mosquitoes or panhandlers or iguanas or leeches, spontaneously in his or her mind comes the thought, I want to attain enlightenment in order to liberate these beings. All these beings are so precious. I really want to benefit them. And one of the foundations of this is this knowledge that we reduce our suffering and dependence on others. The teachings help us, and other sentient beings are the condition for us to reduce our suffering. So it's so important that with each of these steps, you find a place within, with your own personal experience, your own knowledge, to be able to generate an experience of these feelings, not leave it as an intellectual exercise, because you will not change your mind if you do that. It won't happen. It takes pulling from within your own experience of suffering, your own need to be loved, to be cared for, to be, your own, this recognition that we are not independent. We are incredibly dependent on others. And so we want to become one of those beings that others can rely upon. And we develop that by helping others. I mean, it's this real nice little interdependent arising.
I wonder sometimes if we have this sense that we're in control in some way, we can help others. We'll do our best to help others, and then they sort of push us away. What happened? We're trying, and it's not working.
Because we don't have the ability.
We're not ready.
Well, I mean, it's that people push us away because of their own ignorance, but also because we don't know how to help. That's why Buddha's, one of the ways in which Buddhas can help is that they emanate in any form necessary. So if someone needs to have someone to care for, they're going to emanate as a pet. So there's, it's just like, all we can do is, be there. But just like, like the fact that we let friends into our hearts, we can be that for others. We just can't be that for everyone at this point. And Buddhists can't even do it just because. We have to create the cause. We have to have an open heart to receive it. Otherwise, all this help, happens, and we just miss it. It's like, like sometimes you look back on something and go, gee, I just didn't notice that was going on. Because we're oblivious, whatever the reason.
That phrase that you use, being the cause and condition, just really resonated with me, because for me, it really just points to directly how I need to behave, approach,
What really
be,
amazes
just
me
be.
about this stuff is it's not rocket science, but it feels like it's like, it's not illogical.
I think when you're in the midst of your
Self-interest.
day, yeah, I captured and the best example of that is when you're in the midst of your day. When I'm in the office or when I'm deep into whatever project I'm working on, even though everything makes sense, at that moment,
All you
nothing
care
seems
about
practical.
is yours. This is the problem. Our habitual tendency is to take care of me and mine. So we take care of our jobs. We take care, and we will do that sometimes. Not always, but not. I may have been, but we're not in general just evil beings. We will treat people badly and use the excuse of being focused on something for work or for whatever, as the reason. We put our priorities. The Buddha says this is what we'll be doing next week. We need to develop this exchanging self and other, where instead of putting ourselves first, we put others first. So we try to develop the mind of equanimity, that's the equalizing, and then we exchange ourselves with others. And it's the exchanging this attitude that is me first, mine first, what, my goals, my family, mine, whatever, preference above others. And we want to exchange them. Which is hard. But if we learn if we make that our priority, odds are good that we will suffer less. Because we'll have less regret.
Isn't self-preservation the first law of nature?
Well, yeah, the law of nature and samsara. We created that law by our cause of our karma. Because we think, I'm sorry, I need this body, it's the only one I have. But no, you've existed since beginningless time, you've had many bodies. Yeah, that takes a lot of faith. But the point, and the teachings say, you do not give your body away until you really get that. To where it wouldn't disturb your mind at all, to throw yourself in the fire to feed tiger cubs. Until then, don't do it. So.
I was gonna ask if you could go back to.
No. So but I can read it, so what was your question?
The first slide on step 5, generating compassion. You don't have to, it's long, it's okay. Maybe you can send it to me later or something, I don't know. I just thought it was a very eloquent description of compassion.
Just
Yes, I will, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so take a few moments to feel good about how, that you had the desire to come here tonight and you followed through on that, and then you stuck it out without snoring too often, and participated, and said that all of that has an effect on others. So we can rejoice about that. Any desire we have to abandon our unskillful habits and cultivate our skillful habits is wonderful. The mind drives everything that we do or say. So working on the mind is a very skillful activity for our own happiness and the happiness of others. And you weren't alone in this room, so there were others doing the same thing. We can feel good about that. And then while we were here, there have been countless actions of kindnesses happening throughout the world. And we can be 100% confident of that. And that's a wonderful thing. And then we want to dedicate the positive potential of all these positive actions to ripen in the future, to remove the suffering of all suffering beings, until there are no suffering sentient beings left. There's only bliss. So now set an intention for whatever you're going to do next. Remember your priorities in life. Try to set a positive intention, even if it is just to be mindful and get home safely. So thank you for your efforts. And for anybody who wasn't able to come on Sunday to hear Yanzi Rinpoche's teaching, it was really wonderful. So check out the YouTube, for Tuken Kungaling and watch it.
Oh, I was gonna ask about that, so that teaching we can find?
Yeah, so you search YouTube.